Welcome to the Dogtor Bros, where we have an honest discussion around vet life in and out of the clinic. My name is Chris, and I'm your doc of the day and your guide to this episode. I'm a veterinarian living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I'm here with my closest friends from vet school.
Hey, this is Adam. I'm a relief veterinarian in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hey, this is Brandon. I'm a veterinarian with practice limited to small animal internal medicine in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Hey, this is Jeff. I'm a dermatology associate veterinarian in Louisville, Kentucky.
And this is Chris again. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about kind of how our undergrad prepared us for vet school, or kind of our pre-vet program. But before we get to that, we're going to start with our opening questions like we always do. So for today's question, it is, who is your celebrity crush?
So this is Adam. I can start with this one. So for me, most people don't agree with me when I say this, but for me it's Anna Kendrick. I think she's more just like cute and just seems like chill. She seems really likable and really down to earth. So I think the personality kind of plays a factor with that as well. But I think she's really attractive as well. But I always thought her name was Anna Kendrick, but when she says it, I think it's Anna Kendrick. So if I can't even get her name right, I don't think I have a chance. But yeah, I think if I had to choose, I would go with Anna Kendrick.
You know, Adam, I think you have said that for years.
Yes. It's been consistent. It has.
You are consistent. So this is Jeff, and mine is Manny Jacinto. I know he's like hitting all of the social media pages now and For You pages, but when this comes out, it'll be a little bit after the season. But if anybody has seen Star Wars The Acolyte, he is, small spoiler. No, I won't spoil it. I'll just say he's a very big part of it. Go check out Manny Jacinto. He was also one of the leads in The Good Place.
I need to watch The Acolyte now. I'm so behind.
Out of all the spinoffs, like, it's a solid one.
Really? Okay. This is Brandon. Yeah, I like watching the Star Wars spinoffs as well. But for me, I think y'all are going to be jealous that you didn't say this, but Zendaya is my current celebrity crush.
You know what?
She is a bad ass, and I love it. And Good answer.
I'd
have no chance. I'd have absolutely no chance. But
I don't know if Tom Holland can get her.
but he's shredded, like, for, all the Spider-Man shit.
Shredded. She doesn't know.
I can be eventually. I will be.
He's Spider-Man.
Got post-residency bod right now. It's not the best thing.
Whose side are you on, Chris?
Chris is like, yeah, clown. But he's Spider-Man. So.
Yeah, Spider-Man,
just
veterinarian.
He's no internist.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have that. But yeah, easy choice.
Those are all solid answers. Gosh, I don't know. Go with safe answer is Ryan Reynolds. That's what I'm sticking with.
But it's not a wrong choice.
Is that your daddy crush?
That's his daddy crush.
Sure, we'll call it that. Sure. So anyways, diving into this episode.
Daddies for daddies.
How did you guys prep for vet school in undergrad?
This is Adam. So in undergrad, the big two things that I was kind of geared towards focusing on, as I think most of us were getting the classes we needed for vet school, the prerequisites, and getting obviously good grades in those classes, and then also getting work experience in a clinic. So I did do some volunteer work in high school at a clinic. I did work for a few years at a couple different clinics while I was in undergrad. So I was really focused on trying to get a lot of experience in the clinic while I was in undergrad. But then also, again, focusing on hitting those prerequisites and then doing the best I could with my grades. And then on top of that, trying to do some extracurriculars that would kind of enhance my resume a little bit. I was a part of an honors fraternity that I was hopeful would kind of help boost, make me stand out a little bit, I guess, on my resume to vet school. But yeah, I think the biggest thing came down to focusing on the classes I needed for vet school and then also trying to get some work experience.
This is Jeff, and I want to echo what Adam said. I did do some work experience, which some was like during my summers. I would go work at the mom and pop clinic down the street, which I still have a good relationship with them. And I worked as a veterinary assistant, got paid, so that was really helpful. And then I counted those as experience hours because I was working directly with a veterinarian. And I forget, or I don't know what the current requirements are now since that's dated information, but from speaking to some vet students really recently, I understand there's still requirements, sometimes a couple 100 hours, which is easier than it sounds to get if you have a summer job. And I was working 40 hours a week, and I mean, like, I was a poor vet student. I needed the cash, but it was really helpful. And then the other thing I was going to mention was looking up the veterinary schools that I was interested in applying to and scoping through their website and seeing exactly what they're looking for. So if my requirements for certain classes weren't going to hit every vet school, I did try to specifically choose classes that would benefit me. So for instance, I was kind of looking up classes honestly halfway through college, maybe a little bit late, for just getting an idea of where I wanted to go. And I was like, oh shoot, I don't have time to fit in a stats class that some of these schools are looking for. So I would gear my schedule towards what made sense for certain vet schools.
Yeah, to kind of continue where you just left off, this is Brandon. Like, really quickly, was everyone thinking about vet school when they first started undergrad, or was it like a kind of later thing?
Yes.
I was from the get-go, yeah.
Same.
Yeah, same with me. Okay, cool. It's like all of us. I know that's not the same for everybody. But yeah, for me, I think my initial goals, I was at Auburn for undergrad, War Eagle. And
okay.
For vet school, I was like, I want to go to Auburn for vet school. Like, that's where I want to go. Didn't work out, probably for the best. I wouldn't have been able to meet these guys. But I think it kind of depends on, like, if you go to a school that has a vet school already, there's already some prerequisites that they kind of gear you towards. And for me, it was all kind of set in stone. I don't know about you guys, but different degrees have different kind of pathways for to meeting the prerequisites. I know a lot of people do animal science. I personally did zoology because that was something that met the prerequisites at the time. And yeah, I definitely echo what you guys already said. You know, GPA, it is what it is. You kind of have to outshine a good chunk of people to get that next step moving forward to get into vet school. And then you have to show that you put in the work in the industry. I had a different experience. I didn't have as much like a regular clinic time. I did some volunteer work at the Raptor Center in Auburn, where they rehabilitated a lot of the raptors that had been injured and brought to the Raptor Center and were cared for. So I just did volunteer work there. Did a little bit of stuff at a hospital locally at my hometown in the summertime, but more limited than in hindsight I would have liked.
No, that's awesome. This is Chris. So I, with my experience, I chose my undergrad because of their good track record of having students get into vet school. It was Berry College. So I had a different experience than you guys, just because our undergrad had a lot of animals we could work with on campus. So you had the dairy unit, we had the beef unit, we had horses on campus. So I got a lot of large animal experience just from being at school and doing volunteering. I could have worked in the dairy unit, but I just didn't like the hours, so I didn't sign up for that and worked other jobs. But I did pick my classes. I was an animal science major. And so you definitely have to do all the prereqs, like JT was saying, and kind of figure out which schools did what. I was not good at or pre-calculus, so I didn't even do calculus, but I knew statistics could get me in, so I focused on getting that class done. But you kind of have to pick and choose your classes to kind of see which vet schools require what. So in going with that, what was everyone's major? I know Brandon mentioned zoology.
This is Jeff. I was biological science in agriculture is my official degree. I called it fancy biology because it was almost exactly the same as regular biology, but it was in a different college within college. There's a school of biology, but my degree is technically in agriculture.
I was a biology major with a minor in animal sciences with a concentration in veterinary medicine.
That's a mouthful.
Mouthful, yeah.
Very focused.
I was going to say mine was animal science with a minor in chemistry.
I was just going to add on, and we may talk about this later, but so going into vet school, my first couple of years, I was an animal science major. And I had always kind of had in the back of my mind that I kind of felt like I should be more of a biology major, mainly for I guess if things didn't work out with vet school and I wasn't able to get in and I wanted to do something else, I felt like there was more that I could do with biology because animal science was very agriculture related. And I didn't have much of a background with agriculture. And I just felt like for me personally, there was more for me to do with a biology degree. And in my sophomore year of undergrad, I spoke to my advisor about that, who was actually an animal science professor. And he had a really good point that he brought up to me at that time. So his goal was not for us to focus on a major. His goal was for us to focus on the classes we needed to get into vet school. So for anybody that doesn't know, and it was this way when we were in undergrad, and I think it's still this way, you do not need a bachelor's degree to get into vet school. You can apply to vet school your third year of college, your junior year. So he was basically saying, yeah, you may go ahead and get that bachelor degree, but right now you being a sophomore, your goal should be focusing on what classes you need to get into vet school. And I took that advice. That's what I did. And I actually didn't change my major to biology until about 3 months before I graduated. It really wasn't that big of a deal for me to switch over to biology last minute. I had the classes I needed to do it. But I think he had a fairly good point of, especially early on, if you know that's what you want to do, your freshman, your sophomore year, don't worry too much about your major because you can always switch that later. Focus more so on those classes you need to get into vet school and focusing on those classes.
This is Brandon. Yeah, I really like that. I definitely had some friends that were more focused on the getting into vet school rather than graduating from undergrad track. For me, it was a multifaceted thing. I've always had an interest in evolutionary biology, so zoology was a natural fit. But on top of that, at the time, I was a Georgia resident, so I grew up in Georgia for the most of my life, and there was no equivocal degree for zoology at any of the universities in Georgia. So the reason that's pertinent is there was an exchange program kind of situation where for undergrad, 2 out of the 4 years of undergrad, I got in-state tuition, even though I was going to a school in Alabama, which, saved us some money in the long run and that kind of stuff. So that was part of the reasoning for me doing that degree at Auburn at all. On top of it, it worked out that I just was interested in that stuff. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And I for what it's worth, the folks at Auburn, a lot of them did animal science. That was a pretty natural degree to go into veterinary school there. But some of my undergrad classmates were doing zoology degrees and got into Auburn's vet school.
And this is Jeff, and I'm glad y'all brought that up because it made me remember how when we were in vet school, I can't remember who it was, but one of our classmates, or maybe somebody in a different class, I remember they were an English major and then did prerequisites, got into vet school, and even Shun, shout out to Shun, friend of the pod, who he was biomedical engineering, and he did his prereqs and got in. So it is important to remember, just because you don't have a quote unquote biology degree. And I think you're right, Adam. As far as I know, it's the same. Like, you don't have to have a specific bachelor's degree to get into vet school. You just have to have your prereqs. I think you're right. Like, you don't even have to technically have a degree, but it's going to make your life easier, obviously, if you're working towards one. And if you're in something like science or bio, you're probably going to hit the classes you need. I remember I thought about doing animal science and also avian biology during my first couple years of undergrad. And my advisor was like, do you want to take meat production? And I was like, not really. And he was like, so you don't need to be this other degree then. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. And I was like, okay. And, obviously it worked out.
No, it sounds like it did. And that's where, it just depends. I had a professor who was kind of brash about us. It was a personal finance class. And he goes, who here is an animal science major? And like a bunch of us raised our hands. And he goes, if you aren't going to vet school, you're wasting your time. And I'm like, that's not the right way to say it to people.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. I was like, it just kind of took me off. But again, it's one of those, like, you can definitely use a degree for what you're trying to use it for. Like, if you can find a job with your degree, but I think the point that we're trying to say here is you don't need a degree. I know I had a classmate who I went into freshman year with, and then her junior year, I think she got into NC State. So our junior year, she was already gone, and she might have graduated early just from her getting some undergrad credits from in high school. I don't know how that worked, type of thing, but she was able to graduate early, or she didn't get it at all. I don't remember, but either way, I know she applied her junior year. I'm talking about it. I think someone else was an English major that I know from them, but they kind of took our same classes too to track with us. So it doesn't really matter what your degree is in. You just need to get the prereqs and just figure out which school you want to get the prereqs for. Especially if you're trying to go into an in-state school versus an out-of-state school, it matters. For me, I applied to a whole bunch of schools, so I really was just trying to figure out what classes I could take that could allow me to get to the most applications to apply to vet school, and try to make my application as competitive as possible, which kind of leads to the next subject is, do you guys remember your GPAs at all?
This is Brandon. I do. I had a 3.4. I remember that because it was just a very easy number to remember.
This is Jeff. I think I had I don't remember my science GPA because I think that was different. I think I had a 3.2-ish, 3.3 when it was all said and done.
Yeah, this is Adam. I was thinking I was in the ballpark of 3.25, 3.3, something like that maybe. That's one thing I will say is that I know I touched on the two big areas I focused on was getting work experience and and getting the classes you need and the grades and whatnot. And like JT said, he talked to somebody who was applying recently, and the hour requirement, and you may not remember exactly, I don't remember exactly, but it was a few hundred. It wasn't a lot. And I just remember looking at that and then adding up all the hours of experience I had, and I was like, I have a lot, because I had volunteer work in high school, and I had 2 or 3 years worth of, I was working probably 20 plus hours a week for 2 to 3 years while I was in undergrad. So I had way more than the requirement, which sounds like a good thing, but I feel like there was some degree of it taking a toll on my grades as well. I think my grades maybe suffered a little more because I probably was working a little too much. And part of that was the supplemental income, was helping me pay for rent and things like that. But, one thing I would maybe change if I could go back and change things would maybe be take a back seat a little bit with the work and focus a little bit more on the grades.
And that's definitely some good advice to give. And kind of answering the question, I was a 3.4 GPA, and I think my science one, JT, was higher, just because science became more natural to me at that point. But like you said, Adam, with working and stuff, again, Barry was kind of unique because you had to have a job on campus. Like that was just a requirement at the school. So everyone had to work 20 hours ish. Again, I didn't
20
work
hours?
Ish,
Oh.
I think is what it was. Yeah, it was not a lot. But it also helped pay for other, like it was good to have. It's part of the school's tradition of like you having to work to pay for school. Again, it didn't translate to that because the school wasn't that cheap to do that way. But again, it was a good process to have that. But on top of that, other experiences too is I got a lot of summer experience. So I worked in my home clinic over the summer. I also was I guess it's called a junior zookeeper or something. I got an externship working at a zoo for one of the summers. So I definitely had varied experience because I knew my grades weren't as strong as other people. So I have like the experience that I kind of leaned more on. And I think a lot of people that went to Berry have that experience, which is why they tend to have a good track record of having vets or people going into vet school is because they have so much experience in the dairy units, the beef unit, and whatnot. So did you guys apply to multiple vet schools? I kind of said, I applied to 10 vet schools. How many did you guys apply to?
This is Jeff. I applied to 5, and I literally applied to everything that I could afford to apply to and also drive to. I know it was on like the Vermp That Match website, and I literally could only afford to do those and just like took my best shot.
Hey, it's Brandon. I actually did 5 as well. Some of mine were like obviously local, so I was still living in Auburn at the time. Tuskegee, fortunately, is right down the road. So I ended up living in Auburn while I was at Tuskegee as well. And I applied to Ross down in the Caribbean, Georgia. I want to say I applied to Tennessee as well. I believe that those were my 5.
This is Adam. I actually only applied to 2. I applied to Tuskegee and Auburn. It doesn't sound as bold as, or it's not as bold as it sounds. I knew that my highest odds were with those 2. Because again, at the time, I don't know if things are still this way or not, but at the time, Kentucky had a contract with both of those schools to where a portion of their students automatically came from Kentucky. So for Auburn, I think their class at the time was 120 or something like that. And 38 of the students in that class came from Kentucky. So a significant portion. So Auburn and Tuskegee, again, both having contracts, I knew that those 2 were kind of my highest odds of getting in. So those were actually the only 2 I applied to.
Wait, so Adam, were you worried about only applying to 2? Like, was that normal for friends of yours, or were you just like, I'm just going to see what happens? Because that seems low.
Yeah, I don't know. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I know ones that other people were applying to just seemed like a lot more competitive. Places like Ohio State, Purdue, that was another one that was fairly close. But again, those schools didn't have guaranteed seats for Kentucky students. And maybe it was a pessimistic way of looking at things, but I just kind of knew my resume stacked with some of the students I knew that were applying there, especially on the GPA level, was not as strong. So I guess you could say I did put kind of all my eggs into one little section of a basket, but
2 baskets.
Yeah, no, 2 baskets, 2 baskets. Put my eggs in 2 baskets. But yeah, I mean. The Alabama basket, yeah. But at the time, I don't know. It just it didn't really occur to me to apply other places. Really, which now saying it sounds kind of stupid, but but no, I mean that just seemed like my best chance of getting in was with those 2 schools. I was trying to remember because I know we've talked about the island schools previously, and I don't remember if those like if I knew of those in undergrad or not. Like I don't remember a lot about those. Like I don't even know if I knew those were a thing in undergrad. Otherwise, I maybe would have applied to one of those. But again, just kind of stacking my resume up with some of my classmates even, and knowing that Tuskegee and Auburn both held seats for Kentucky students, I just kind of figured those were my best chances of getting in.
And for context, listeners, Kentucky is one of the states that does not have a veterinary school yet. So, Adam, like you're in kind of a special situation where if you wanted to stay in undergrad, perhaps to save money, or just because you have good schools here, you have to automatically think about going out of state for veterinary school. So it's helpful that you have contracts with the state VMA and other schools like Tuskegee and Auburn. And then I was going to ask actually, Chris, or I guess Chris and maybe a little bit you, Adam, since you both went to undergrads that did not have a veterinary school automatically connected to it, did that change how you navigated undergrad at all?
This is Chris. So I just went, the classes were kind of pretty much set that the school knew, like, hey, here's what we can get you into vet school for. But for applying, I kind of did the shotgun method. I just kind of said whoever will take me, and I dispersed. I overachieved. I was just trying to, I wrote down, I was like, all right, I couldn't even remember all 10. I got up to 9, but I know I applied to all of these schools. My home state at the time was Florida, and so I did not get into UF for undergrad, and then I tried to get in for vet school just because, again, it would have been a lot cheaper. Glad it didn't work out because, again, I wouldn't have met you guys, but UF was my home state to try to get into for undergrad, and I didn't even try Georgia because there was something going around where Georgia had a really low out-of-state acceptance rate. So I was like, well, I'm not even going to try. So that's why I didn't try with UGA. I don't know if that's true or not. I just, for some reason, decided not to apply for them. But
I mean, I can tell you being in-state, I did not get in. So I don't know.
I even thought about changing my residency to be in-state for Georgia to see if that would help me get in. Uh-huh. But even then, knowing a lot of the Berry students, not a lot of them got into UGA, but they went to like Iowa. I know one of them went to UGA, but they had to go a different route. So, again, it kind of just worked out that way for me where I went to my undergrad, had a good track record, and then I got lucky enough to get into vet school on the first try with that.
Yeah, and this is Adam. So, yeah, like you were saying, Kentucky has that contract with those schools because they don't have a vet school. They somehow crunch the numbers and find that it's more cost effective to send students and pay a portion of tuition. So those seats that they hold at Auburn, the Kentucky students that go there, they pay in-state tuition. So there is an added incentive for the Kentucky students to go there as well. And that's another reason why a lot of the eggs are in that basket is because there's that added incentive, because obviously I'm not going to get that anywhere else. Kentucky doesn't have a vet school. So Auburn offers in-state tuition. They hold almost a third of their seats for Kentucky students. Hell yeah, that's going to be my best chance. That and Tuskegee, because again, Tuskegee holds a couple seats as well. So that's kind of where that philosophy comes from. That paired with the fact that because of that connection, our undergrad works very closely with Auburn. A lot of the faculty knows a lot of the faculty at Auburn. We actually had a professor come to Western Kentucky, where I went to undergrad, who came from Auburn. He had taught at Auburn, and he's a veterinarian, and he came to teach at Western Kentucky. So there's a lot of connections there, and so you hear Auburn University come up a lot. And actually, in the state of Kentucky, when you take your dog in to see a vet, chances are that vet graduated from Auburn University. It's just a very high percentage of vets here that went to Auburn just because there is that connection. So that's why that was one of my main two, Auburn and Tuskegee. Again, being close to each other, but also having that connection with Kentucky. That's why a lot of my focus was there.
Fair enough.
This is Brandon again. We had a couple of classmates that were from South Carolina as well. And I believe I don't know if it's Clemson or whichever one is the land grant school is probably getting a vet school. I think they're getting a vet school out there here in the next couple of years.
I think it's Clemson.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I know things are changing. There's like multiple vet schools on the horizon. So if you are listening to this and applying now, definitely do a little bit of research and see what's coming out there. One of my resident mates is from New Mexico, and she kind of did a whole program where she has to go back to New Mexico to practice after she's finished with her residency as part of like her deal, so to speak. So, yeah, depending on where you are, some of those incentives might require you to go back to your home state or what have you.
And as I know of, at least when I went to vet school, that was not a requirement for Kentucky. I think there was just the hope that those students would come back to the area. But that, again, things have changed. We're old now. We graduated, I don't know, in the Stone Ages. It was a long time ago. So, like you said, things change. So, yeah, even if you're applying from Kentucky down there, definitely check that out because that could have changed. There may be some requirement to where you do need to come back to practice here for a while.
The horizons are changing too because it's kind of there's a significant amount of vet schools being added to, I guess, the pool of people you can apply to. Because I think Florida's getting another vet school, if I remember correctly. Arizona just had one recently. Tennessee has 2 now. So there's definitely more options for people coming up to get into vet school. Did you guys do any like extracurriculars or anything like that, or anything else that kind of made your application stronger?
Yeah, this is Jeff, and I kind of went a little bit too hard my first year. I think all of us are kind of in the boat of like our grades were affected one way or another. Like we did well in undergrad, but like we weren't like the 4.0 crazy intense students, which is great if you are that person, but I did first year. I jumped in. I did 5 clubs, and I don't remember all of them. I remember 4, which was I was so excited to be at school. I did swim club. I did pre-vet club. I did Young Democrats. I did mock trial club because I was in mock trial. That's nothing to do with my degree. And whatever the other one was, and before second semester hit, I was only in 1 club, and I was like, I'm dying. I was just so excited to be at school and like jump into things, and even those like once a week meetings start to build up, and you're like, I really overextended myself. I wasn't studying well, which we've kind of covered before. I learned how to study honestly better when I got to vet school, but I overcommitted. My grades definitely suffered. And then I kind of circled back, and I ended up doing some people have heard of like Dance Marathon, and we called it's whatever club your school has that's associated with like a Children's Miracle Network, and you're raising money we raise money for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and we did Dance Marathon, like a 24-hour, every hour is like coordinated. There's some dancing, there's family stories from the children and their families from hospitals that are affected, usually with like different types of rare conditions or diseases. And I ended up getting really involved in that, stayed in swim club. Those were my mainstays. And I felt like I ended up doing like whatever their executive type board was, and I felt like I got a lot of good leadership experience. I feel like that helped me stand out. And then doing some kind of sport, I don't know, I felt more well-rounded, so I kind of stuck with those 2 for most of undergrad. And like Chris, I also had a job, but our school capped us at like, I think 15 hours was the most we could do, and I did like about 10 hours a week for 2.5 years. I worked in a dining hall, and that was a hard job, but like it was a lot of fun. But I think those 3 things kind of helped round out my application.
Yeah, this is Adam. The biggest extracurricular I was a part of was the honors fraternity I was in, Phi Sigma Pi. I was pretty active in that. My senior year, I was the president of our chapter. That got a little crazy because that took up a lot of time. And again, my work schedule took up a lot of time as well, paired with classes. I remember one day of the week in my senior year, I think it was Tuesdays, I would get up. I had to be at work at like 6 a.m. to go like deal with the board dogs, come home, change, go to class at 8 a.m. I was in class from like 8 to 1, come back home, change clothes, go to work. I was at work till 6, come home, change clothes, go to my fraternity meeting at 7, was usually there till like 9:30, and I got home around 10, and I was just dead. So 6 a.m. till like 10 p.m. like I would not stop moving every Tuesday, and I was like, that's too much. About halfway through the semester, I was like, this is not okay. But that again, like I said, kind of comes into a play where I wish I had and by that point again, that's senior year. So we've already done the applying to vet school and everything. But again, prior to that, there were similar instances to that. So again, taking a backseat in some of that stuff and kind of managing my time better probably would have been, more advisable for me to kind of manage things better. But those were the overall extracurriculars that kind of took up my time. And I'm not knocking those at all. I'm not saying I wish I hadn't done those, but maybe just taking a backseat a little bit in those. Because, again, even with the working, like I was well beyond what I needed, minimum requirement to get into vet school. However, I don't regret that work because I think I got way more experience related to veterinary medicine working in that clinic than I did sitting in an undergraduate classroom. So I'm not disparaging that in any way. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go a little bit above and beyond the minimum requirement for your work hours, but again, within moderation to kind of make sure you're hitting everything you need to hit.
This is Brandon. I kind of feel like a slacker compared to you guys because I did my volunteer work with the Raptor Center early on. I stopped that probably into junior, senior year. I did some a kind of small amount of work for my family business on the with my dad and his business when I was at home at times, but really I did summer classes during the summer. I ended up not working. I didn't have to. In hindsight, it would have been nice to do a little bit more extracurriculars, especially in the summertime, to get a little bit more well-rounded, aside from any sort of clinic experience that I was getting, like we talked about earlier. I did water polo for a short stint. I did pre-vet club, and I'm kind of curious to get everyone's opinion, how much that actually helped you guys, the pre-vet club at different schools, because I felt like it didn't change a lot for me. But I'm just kind of curious to get everyone's opinion on that specifically.
This is Jeff. Mine was very minimal, which is why I ended up not continuing with the club. Didn't make it past freshman year. I'm sure it was great. It just wasn't great for me.
Sure.
I kind of slowly stuck with mine just because it was there. But I had a kind of different with you guys. Freshman year, not doing too many clubs or anything. I was on the baseball team freshman year, and so that took up all of my time. It was morning workouts, practice. You get out of class, you go straight to practice, eat, study, go back. It was just all year was doing that, and then I messed with my shoulder and did not continue it into sophomore year. So that was kind of the biggest break because I know my grades did suffer some freshman year just because studying on a bus is not the best way to prepare for a test, especially with the sciences. And it always seemed to work out. Our longest trip was right before a big test. So then I'm studying, trying to cram stuff in, which again, I didn't really know how to study then either. So, but that was kind of weird thing with that. But then like other things I did, I thought that would make my application more competitive. I know going back to the initial thing was I was an RA, so I thought that kind of helped with like some leadership stuff, and ended up being like the head resident, which that brought a lot of leadership onto my plate, which kind of I think helped out with vet school. And we ended up doing a lot of mock interviews, so I think that helped out for interviews for vet school, was I was able to do those interviews ahead of time, and then we were able to kind of figure out how to talk to somebody during an interview and at least not stumble too crazy or sound just so timid while I'm talking to somebody about trying to get into vet school. So those are like kind of some little extracurricular things that I did. I also was involved into intramurals because without playing baseball, I really had nothing else to do for sports, so I needed to do something. But yeah, Brent, pre-vet club, I don't remember. It wasn't a big memory, but I do know I was in it probably all throughout undergrad. I wasn't heavily involved at all. Is there any advice that you guys would give to any aspiring vet students?
All right, this is Brandon. Don't be like me in undergrad. I was like, in hindsight, I was a little lazy relative to my amazing peers here. So get involved in extracurriculars. Check out your pre-vet club, but if they suck, don't worry about it. And it's the truth. And
Or make it better.
Yeah, or make it better. You could be president. You could be treasurer and increase their funds by 1,000%.
That's right. I know that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, just get involved. Don't be afraid to seek opportunities in like the veterinary world, whether that be more traditional at a veterinary hospital versus something like I did in the Raptor Center rehabilitation, if you have that option. But yeah, just get involved and strengthen your resume, because it's tough out there as a veterinary or aspiring veterinary student. There's a lot of people that want to do this job because, we're all vets. I know there are challenging days, but at the end of the day, I still love my job. And I'm just grateful that I am able to be here practicing veterinary medicine today.
This is JT, and I would say be intentional and be flexible. So use your time wisely when you're choosing clubs. Make a conscious effort not to overextend yourself, and make sure you are being that well-rounded person. So like I said, like I did a little bit of a sport. I picked one or two clubs that I really enjoyed and I thought would be helpful, because one was a little bit more community service. And then I really made sure that my classes would fit the schools that I was applying to, and I cut out the rest.
Yeah, and this is Adam. Again, I've kind of reiterated the same thing over and over. If I could go back, it would be to manage my time better. So again, just finding that balance between getting that work experience in the clinic, hitting those classes that you need for vet school, and really studying well. We've talked in previous episodes about knowing your specific study style, what best way you learn and taking in information. So knowing that, so you can study well for those classes. And then the last thing I'd add on, if there's one other thing you want to do, is seek out some of the classes that they have in vet school. And if they have them in your undergrad, go ahead and hit some of those up as well. So I was lucky enough, if you go back and listen to our vet school year 2 episode, we talk about some of the classes we had, and I was lucky enough to where I had several of those in undergrad, and that helped me tremendously because year 2 of vet school was information overload. We had a lot of classes, and fortunately for me, I had taken a lot of them in undergrad, so that helped a lot. So kind of do a little research if you need to pick up some spare hours, which you probably don't, but if you do, then seek out those classes that are going to be in vet school that you can go ahead and get a jump start on learning some of the information for that will help you down the line.
This is Chris. That's all good advice. I'd kind of the same ways. Don't stretch yourself too thin. Trying to be involved in everything. Definitely focus on studying. Grades do help out a lot with getting into vet school. I mean, they do look at your GPA, so definitely don't take classes and studying for granted. And like Adam said, if you have a class that you can take that's in vet school but offered in undergrad, like kind of a similar course, that does help. I didn't have that exactly, but we did have one professor who was notoriously hard, but it was how her questions were asked for tests made you think, and I think that helped prepare me for vet school. It was like the multiple choice and like the true falses, but you had to figure out like which ones were true and which ones were false, and it was multiple choice within those sentences. So those just like kind of different ways of thinking that did help me for vet school. But yeah, overall, just don't spread yourself too thin. So to kind of round up this episode, last question is, what would you guys do in retirement? Like, what would your job be?
This is Brandon. This one is pretty easy for me because I've kind of thought about this a little bit. With internal medicine, the nice thing is, we right now we have a pretty wide range of, kind of like our specialty is kind of like a jack of all trades in a way. We do a lot of gastroenterology, endocrinology, infectious disease, so on and so forth. So, consulting is a big thing for internal medicine specialists. So some people that are out there that don't want to work in the clinic can do consulting online. And I think that's what I would fall back on. I'd probably get bored if I just straight up retired. So I'd probably do like some online consulting, and like try and help guide other veterinarians in their case management for some more complicated cases that maybe can't go see a specialist in person.
This is Adam. If we're talking about jobs in retirement, I'm going to quote a country song here by Zach Brown Band, because I think he can put it a little better than I can. Got my toes in the water, ass in the sand, not a worry in the world, and a cold beer in my hand. And that's what I'm doing in retirement. I'm not working. I'm chilling on the beach. I don't know. I really think in retirement I would get more into the financial side of things, like investing and maybe rental properties and things like that. But like
Reynolds properties.
There you go.
Reynolds rentals.
Reynolds. But I'm also focusing on working hard now so I don't have to work hard later. That's the ultimate goal. So in retirement, I'm definitely going to be taking it easy. But maybe a little bit of financial working on the side.
This is Jeff. I would say if I have to have a job in retirement, I have had this dream of like working in a brewery or just like a mom and pop place and just like pouring people's beers and just asking locals like, hey, like what kind of beer you like? Like, let me find out. Oh, okay. Like, yeah. What brings you in? Like, because I don't want to be like a bartender. Like, I have no interest in making like full big drinks, but just like, oh yeah, you need a flight? Yeah. Oh, you like that kind of, you like an IPA? Okay, let's get you on. Yeah, you're going to love this. Okay, try this. What do you think about that? Yeah, I knew you would like that. You want to open the tab or close it? All right, perfect. Like just something super easy, mindless, something I would enjoy since I'm a big beer boy anyway, and literally working for fun. Like not, in my fantasy, this is just to keep busy, not because I need the money. And also the beach.
Jeff is going to be that wise old man in the movie at like the critical point where the main character is going through a hard time and he comes in and he sits down and he just gives him the critical life advice he needs like at that exact moment.
Yeah.
Please.
Literally working to be a side character, a pivotal side character. Just call it.
Or Adam, he can be the bartender at the beach for us while we're sitting there.
Yes, you can bring me my beers. Yes, please.
I'll go grab it from the bar, but that way we're all
okay.
we're near each other.
Maybe.
Brandon can be there on his computer doing his consults.
Yeah,
He's the real bartender.
JT can. I'll get the round for everybody. I'll tip well JT. It's fine.
JT, around for the bar. Come on, line them up.
All right. Pour shots.
JT, that's too many people. I'm done talking to people after 65 or whatever it is at that time.
I'm not far away.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Dogtor Bros.
If you would like to support us, please share this episode with others who may be interested in today's topic, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Would you like to influence our next episode? We love hearing your opinions and thoughts. Your comments may be our next topic.
Please leave us suggestions via email at thedoctorbros@gmail.com, DM us at thedoctorbros on Instagram, or leave us comments on our posts. Again, this is Brandon. You can reach me at Dr. Mason IM on Instagram.
And this is Chris, and you can reach me on Instagram at dr.chrishernandez.
And this is Jeff. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at DermDrJeff, DermDogtorJeff.
And this is Adam. You can reach me on Instagram at DrAdamDVM. That's DrAdamDVM.